I look for a mask of my mom, which would be the best description of guilt. I look for a mask of just a lady, and I couldn't find one, so I had her help me find something pretty. But we hide behind guilt from what God wants us to become. We really do. It encapsulates us at times. By the way, whoever came up with this idea was genius. I like that. Don't you agree? There's stuff in your life that keeps you. Go to the verse, please. 2 Corinthians 4:1. Since God has so generously let us in on what He is doing, we're not about to throw up our hands and walk off the job just because we run occasional hard times. There are masks that we hide behind. It's really true. Sometimes there is a family member. I always refer to the program Everyone Loves Raymond, because mom walks in the room and it goes silent. It's crippling. Mike Lacona, who you know, is a dear friend of mine, bared his soul in an article that came out this week on Mission Magazine about the state of apologetics in America, and how that here he is, a leading figure in teaching biblical apologetical stuff. And he's dealing with the fact that I, Mike, did a very bad job of equipping my kids. My kids aren't strong in defending their faith. Wow. I think of my own kids, and I think about shortcomings they might have in their lives and what I could have done differently to empower them. You get into leadership, church leadership, business leadership, you live with guilt all the time. It haunts you. Now, I'm at this senior pastor thing almost 5 years now. Don't get me started on the mistakes I've made. Because it's like a cat and nine tails. You just want to beat yourself. Because you realize, if I dealt with this differently, if I shared truth differently with that person, how much further could we be along? How different could our culture be, you know? Then you think about the friends that you've lost. I have a friend who passed away recently. And over the course of 12 years that I built a friendship with him, there were countless times that I shared truth. But each time it was like, that's nice. I'm happy for you. But he still died without Christ. I think about all the stuff, all the needs, the hunger issues that we deal with in this community. You know, the new statistics have come out. It's no longer 36.5% of the people in this congressional district go to bed hungry every night. It's now 40. That eats at me. The fact that we're giving Bibles out to kids and half to a third of the kids can't read. It aches at my heart. And you sit back and say, okay, not all on you, Chuck, but you're a pastor, you're a community leader. What could you be doing to make a difference? Because you see, the higher you go in leadership, the more guilt you're going to deal with. Guilt is something that haunts us. There's a story of the playwright Noel Coward. Anyone remember Noel Coward? His plays? He was a prankster. But he took being a prankster to monumental. We're talking the Grand Canyon of pranks. He one time wrote an anonymous letter to 10 notable men in London. The note said, "We know what you have done, and if you don't want to be exposed, leave town." The next year, 6 of the 10 men moved. Wow. Now that was a pretty terrible prank. It goes to show the power of guilt. We're going to look at David today as we unpack this. Because you see, King David, the higher he got in God's dealing in his life, the more he had to struggle with guilt. And there's two major psalms written, one about his guilt and the anguish that he was going through, and one how God dealt with him. And we're going to look at that. In 1 Samuel 13, it says King David was described as a man after God's own heart. But as good as David was, he was far from perfect. Psalm 32 is a song that describes his own personal experience. I've never committed murder.
Are you just looking at me?
I'm actually staring at the green tablecloth.
I was going to say, do you know something I don't know?
No. David fell in love with a woman. Now, I've heard this story told 47 million different ways, but basically Bathsheba was taking a bath in the hot tub. Out in the balcony, David was checking her out and said, I want that, and sent for her. Now, okay, Bathsheba, I don't think it was a smart move to be bathing in the hot tub on the back porch, okay? But then again, it wasn't so cool for what David did. The real sin of the whole thing was a child that came forth. That was the first big sin. Actually the second. So they have this child. She conceives. To cover up his sin, Uriah, her husband, is one of his mighty men. One of his field commanders. He calls him home, He's home now. And David says, well, he goes home, he hangs out with his wife for the weekend, there'll be an example of the fact that he was home, and, about the same time that she conceived, he's conniving, he's trying to line up the ducks to cover himself, But this guy's like, my troops are in the field, serving God, putting their lives on the line. Who can I to enjoy the pleasures? So what did he do? He slept in David's front porch. He didn't go be with his wife. So David takes it a step beyond that. Now he's not just being deceitful and lining up the ducks, but he's now like, I got to get this guy out of the way. So he sends direct orders to other commanders that when this guy goes forward in battle, that they were to withdraw, and he's massacred. Now, the Bible just talks about this guy dying, but I've studied history, and I've studied battle, and I've studied strategic stuff. They didn't just lose him in this group, because I'll guarantee you, as loyal as he was to David, there were men around him that were faithful to him in his stewardship that didn't pull back when the other guys pulled back. So David didn't kill one guy. I'm just going to guess to say there were 40 or 50 guys that were taken out because of David's sin. Now, a couple years later, prophet of God, hello. I hate serving in that type of a leadership role where God just shows you stuff. God says, look at that. I'm like, I'd rather not. Because if I look at it, don't make me want to deal with it. And I'm like, no. Samuel was one of those guys. He was a man of God. Men of God hear from God about stuff. Why? Because it's about unity. It's about us moving together as a body of Christ. It's about us honoring one another in love. And if you're a spiritual leader, you're going to see stuff. So here is Samuel having to deal with David. And here's Nathan having to deal with David. And they get in his face. Prophet gets in his face and speaks to him. So what's the end result of this? The secret of David's sin seems to be covered beneath a blanket of time. But there was a secret sin on earth that was an open scandal in heaven, so God sends the prophet Nathan to confront the king. I mentioned Samuel because you know something? Samuel in his old age, his kids wouldn't follow God, this great prophet. Do you know it's very rare for a man of God to have their kids? I was listening the other day to Franklin Graham and his kids, and I'm like, some of his kids get it. Some of his kids don't get it. I watched Andy Stanley this morning. I said, here's his dad, who was a great preacher, who went through a horrible divorce, and here's his son, loving God, serving God. So there's guilt, We get back to Nathan. So Nathan gets in his face. David falls and cries out, I have sinned. In Psalm 51 is what was written by David, where he's just gushing his guilt. I'm not going to get into just a little bit of the Psalm 51 today. Verse 2 and 3, it says this, wash me clean from my guilt, purify me from my sin, for I recognize my shameful deeds, for they haunt me day and night. And if you go to Psalm 32, which is written after this anguish, we find that David's been able to wash off the grime of his guilt and make peace of mind, and his relationship with God has been restored.